Hello and welcome to another edition of It's About Money. I'm Nanette Nocon and thanks for joining us. If this is the first time you've tuned in, our objective is to educate you about a number of money matters. Our goal is not to replace your advisors, but to simply educate you. Today we have a very exciting program because it means that we're going to talk about long-term care. It means that we're living longer and hence we have to address this issue. So that's a great thing. And we have an expert here, Western New York expert Dave Casiano from GE Long-Term Care to talk to us about what he knows. He's a terrific expert, has been in the long-term care business for several years and 12 years as a physical therapist. So Dave, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Nanette. Thank you for having me.
So talk about your background a little bit and how you got into the specialty of long-term care.
Sure. I'm a physical therapist and basically got involved in long-term care as a therapist in nursing home work and home care work. So I got a vision of what actually goes on and what happens there, and have been pretty passionate and have basically been able to see if we can do a little bit of planning in advance, we may be able to dictate more so for ourselves and our family how we age and aging in place. So for the past 6 years now, I've been working with financial advisors and educating them on the problem of long-term care and educating them on what are their options. So I love it. It's been a really great transition for me.
It's nice to, whenever you can offer people more choices when they come to a point in their lives that they need a little bit more assistance.
Absolutely. Right? I mean, normally people, we'd look at this as a gloom and doom topic, and I'm an eternal optimist, and so I like to look at it from here are some options that we have, and personally and professionally what I saw, you can kind of mitigate that by doing a little bit of planning in advance.
Now, let's talk about what does long-term care mean. I mean, you and I know what it encompasses, but help our audience understand, what do people really mean when they talk about long-term care?
Sure. Long-term care, it's the things that we do every day that we take for granted. We're able to get out of bed, we're able to navigate throughout the house, get ourselves dressed and fed, and the things that we do every day. But someday we may not be able to do that, and whether it's from an injury, an accident, or just living a long life, we may need some help. And so that's basically what long-term care is.
Okay, and then in terms of help, that can be received in a number of different methods, right? Different places. Talk to us about how we can get long-term care assistance. What are the venues?
Sure. People can receive long-term care services in their home, and that's usually where most folks want to receive the care, quite frankly. There's assisted living or life care centers that are being developed, and you can't help but not see them in your communities being built. And then there's also nursing homes where people, that becomes their home, and they receive the necessary services to meet their functional needs.
So really the preferred choice is to be at our comfort of our own homes and be able to have people come in and help us out.
That's what I saw professionally when I did my therapy, is if you took two people who had pretty much the same condition, and I would take care of them in the home versus the person in the nursing home. And again, I'm not putting down nursing homes. They're wonderful, they have their place, but it seems like when you're familiar with your surroundings and your environment, and you're able to do better in that type of situation from what I've noticed.
Sure, because then the training or the assistance is within the confines of what you're comfortable with.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
You feel more in control.
Sure.
Especially in a time when you're maybe losing some control. It's very critical to be able to hold on to or maintain as much control as you can.
Now, when we're dealing with long-term care, there's a number of ways to financially address the issue, because that's an expensive, very expensive proposition. Yes. Actually, what's the average cost of long-term care assistance today?
Working with a number of individuals in Rochester, the one individual was in a nursing home recently and shared that the cost, it was actually putting their mom in a nursing home, was $118,000 a year. Another facility was $110,000 a year. So just looking for room and board, the per diem rate in Rochester, you're looking at anywhere between $100,000 a year and $120,000 a year, and that's in today's cost.
Sure, and it seems that it's rising at a faster rate than what inflation is on other things. Perhaps maybe not as much as gasoline these days, but going up in price, but it has been going up.
Unfortunately, yeah, there's projections too that in the next 20 years, long-term care costs are projected to triple across the board for home
right?
care or nursing home or assisted care. So if a nursing home today is $100,000 a year, in 20 years, it's $300,000 a year. And the average age that somebody's going into a nursing home in New York State is about 84. So for our listeners who are listening to this or watching this, they can get an idea in terms of what the cost may be when they may be more likely to need long-term care.
I see. So really,
Sure.
when we think of long-term care, although there's a chance that we might need it at a younger age, typically it's in our mid-80s that
Yeah.
this would occur. At least happening right now.
Right. I think that, the majority of folks who do need long-term care services are, over the age of 65. But interestingly, 40% of the individuals receiving long-term care services in America are under 65 years of age.
Is that right?
Sure.
Do you know what the reasons are? Why would it be such a young
car
age?
accidents and that type of thing, but they're also including individual special needs children and whatnot, so
Okay.
that also gets taken into account in that statistic. But
Sure.
the primarily medically frail or disabled individuals receiving long-term care would be more so in an older age bracket.
I see. Okay, so there's some illnesses too that may require prolonged services as well, probably. Yeah.
Certain
Okay.
conditions actually create the need of having long-term care more so than other conditions where you may not linger quite as long.
I see.
And then when you take into account medical advances and people are living longer or healthier lives, things that used to be killers to us quickly, like say cancer, now people are actually living with cancer for a long time, but maybe having some needs. So cancer has become a long-term care need, which it wasn't 30 years ago.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, it's wonderful with technology advancement, medical advancements, but it does keep us alive. So it's the question of how we maintain that quality of living.
Absolutely. It's the quality of life that you want to live and can.
Now, you've mentioned 100 to 130,000 perhaps in a nursing home facility, but the home care expenses may be as much or less depending on certain needs, right?
There's a number of variables that you have to take into account when you look at the cost of care for home care. Obviously, one is how many hours a day of care, what level of care is it being provided just from an aide, or are you having actually skilled services such as therapists or nurses coming in? The other area is, are you deriving your care independently from somebody that you've found on your own, which the cost can be less than if you were using an agency. And agencies are wonderful because they're designed to do that, but the cost is more if you were going through an agency versus using somebody privately or somebody you knew from your church or synagogue or what have you.
So from a financial perspective, we've got the issue of how much does it cost, whether it's in a long-term care facility or whether it's the house. And then on the other side, we also have the issue of, if in the house, what kind of fees do we pay? Is it somebody that you hire directly, that you could hire directly, or somebody through an agency?
Right.
So you could extend the life of your coverage
Right.
if you didn't have to go through an agency, for example.
Correct, and that's a cost issue, but the other issue that I saw when I was doing my therapy, and I see now working in the insurance side of it, is the people want choice. And especially for a loved one that you care about, if you can't be with them for that time frame, and I have individuals right now who are in that situation who still have to work and their significant other or their spouse are at home, they are really, it's critical for them to be able to determine who's coming into the home taking care of somebody they love. They want to feel comfortable that they can be able to leave them, with somebody that they're entrusted to. So
Sure.
those are really.
What happens is you've got this sandwich generation sometimes. You've got people in their middle age, and then they have to take care of their kids who may be going to college or grandchildren, and they have to take care of their own parents.
Absolutely.
So to think about how do we provide the most comfort for our folks, need to think about that soon enough so that the coverage is there or the financing is there.
Absolutely. It's too late once the event occurs. Everything that happens from a financial standpoint, from a physical standpoint in terms of the actual burden to be able to take care of somebody or manage them physically, moving them or whatnot, as well as the emotional impact of if you ever had to someday make a decision for a loved one, a child, a mom and dad, of having to put them in a nursing home. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I talked to when I worked in a nursing home who they did everything they could for their mom or their dad, but when they had to put them there, it's still the guilt that they carried for having to do that. So it's very emotional, not just financial, there's physical issues. The physical strain on a primary caregiver for somebody somebody. There's studies out there that have said reduce the lifespan of that primary caregiver. So there's so many aspects to long-term care planning. We usually just hear of the financial side, but there's so much more to it.
I visited a client at Monroe Community Hospital whose roommate is the wife of somebody who was disabled. So she was providing care for her husband. So she was moving her husband from the tub, outside of the tub, but he was a big man, heavy man, and when she twisted, he fell on her and she crushed her bones. So now she's stuck in a particular position, just kind of laying in bed, but upright. She can't lay down or get up. But she herself ended up in a nursing home because she was attempting to take care of her husband, which is wonderful, but then she really didn't have the physical strength to be able to transfer him from one place to the other.
When somebody's physically, dependent on you, whether it's minimally or moderately, I mean, I'm strong, and I had a hard time sometimes being able to manage a 120-pound female stroke patient because, again, some portion of their body is not helping to assist with that. So, those are things we don't think about. We always want to think our spouse will take care of us or somebody will take care of us, but maybe it's not plausible or possible.
Sure, and sometimes I think our children will take care of it, but sometimes there's that discomfort. Certain generations say, gee, I would not be comfortable. And maybe not haven't thought about it yet, but wouldn't be comfortable maybe bathing my mother or my father or doing things that are kind of personal.
Absolutely. There's that dignity issue, and I'm married with 5 kids. My oldest will be 15, my youngest is 3. My wife teases and says she has 6 kids, but it'd be very hard for me if someday I have 3 girls, if my girls were having to take care of me, and that's critical for us as educators to be able to convey to individuals that long-term care is not me or you going to Wegmans or Tops or wherever to buy something, for our mom or our dad. It's us going and bathing and toileting and dressing. That's literally what long-term care is. So it's important to make sure we're all on the same page and understanding what long-term care is. And I know for me personally, it would be very difficult to have my daughters do that for me. I know I've talked about it with my mom and dad, and they have long-term care insurance for the reason of their kids are going to always be involved with their care. It's just a question of to what extent they are. And I know my mother would not feel comfortable with me bathing her or toileting her.
Yeah, you're right, because it's a different, it's just something else. You don't think about those things, but in a practical sense, it's our daily body functions that need to be tended to. So
it's not pleasant to talk about or think about, but it is the reality.
Somebody who said, oh, if I was ever need to be in a nursing home, I'd rather just stay in a hotel and have them take care of me because it's cheaper. I said, that's reasonable to think they've got the comfort of a hotel room, but I don't think they're going to toilet you or transfer you. It's a little different. They change the bed sheets, a pleasant environment, but there's that nursing piece that you're going to need, and most of the time hotels cannot provide that piece.
It's amazing the price. I mean, it's less expensive, but you certainly won't get the attention physically, health related, sure. Right,
everything looks good, but they just can't move, can't do all those things. Now, if someone chooses to look at long-term care as the way to finance, long-term care insurance as a way to finance long-term care needs, what are the considerations that people ought to be looking at? I'm in my early 40s, but yet I've got it because I'm afraid that something might happen down the road. Plus, it's cheaper for me to do it. What are the reasons? What are the things that people ought to be looking at when they're choosing to make long-term care insurance the way to finance potential future needs?
It's a complex issue, and you really need to take the time to evaluate it on a personal basis. Whether you're married or single. And it's really a function of education. If people are informed of what the problem of long-term care is, and what the problem of long-term care is that our healthcare system unfortunately doesn't cover it. The only primary resource we have to cover our long-term care needs is our family. And if for whatever reason, because it's custodial care, our family can't take care of us, a nursing home will take care of us. And then we would go through what's called a Medicaid spend down. So our government's set up to take care of us only through the government program called Medicaid, but we have to exhaust or deplete all our assets before that would happen. So considerations in terms of looking at, is that a viable option for me? If I'm single and I got sick, who would be there to take care of me? If I'm married and my spouse is depending on a certain amount of income in retirement, and I get sick and need that care and I have to use that money, now what happens to the surviving spouse who may be on earth for 10, 15, or 20 years? So there's so many ramifications. Children working or have kids and they're being pulled from their job taking care of mom and dad. Maybe they have difficulty now with their job or taking care of a situation with their homes. So all these things have to be taken into account and looked at, and then when you're looking at designing plans and whatnot, you kind of design the plan or the insurance plan around what it is you want to achieve from that if you're using insurance as the option.
So basically it's important to know what, to work with the individual helping you choose the plan or design the plan to address all those issues.
Absolutely.
What's the financial picture?
Yes,
and all that
and
stuff.
that's where it's really critical to work with somebody who specializes in this type of information or who has that understanding that they can really look at that. It is really a difficult thing to do over the phone or with a mailer. I mean, it's hard enough for individuals who are in the field to understand all the nuances. So that's a critical piece.
So really important to look at the big picture.
Yes.
Look at the finances, the living conditions, the long-term
Correct.
desires,
Yes.
home or nursing home.
Yeah.
And more critical when people are married, because then there's certain assets. You know, many people in the financial business sometimes define marriage as communing of assets and the ability to help each other out.
Yes.
But in a situation when a long-term care need arises, it's really a drain now.
Yes.
Not only in this half and half drain, it's a significant drain. So if the annual cost is more than $100,000, you could use up your retirement nest egg in a jiffy.
Very quickly.
Right?
Very quickly.
And so the question is how can the community spouse, I guess that's the label that we give the spouse who gets to stay at home, right?
Yes.
Community spouse. So the community spouse staying at home, will he or she have enough resources to take care of his or her
Exactly.
need?
Yes, and the majority of people that I've talked to in meetings, especially in spousal situations, spousal meaning a husband and wife, the biggest concern that they have is the second to die or the surviving spouse outliving the money. They certainly do want to pass a legacy on, but what I've seen, and this is just my own personal experience, has been that's a secondary issue. The primary issue is making sure that spouse, the surviving spouse, can maintain their same lifestyle and quality of life and not have to change that dramatically in the event of a long-term care situation for their spouse.
So because really from an emotional perspective, you've got the community spouse having to contend with not having that partner either at home or able to do the kinds of things they used to do together.
Absolutely.
Just traveling or whatever.
Absolutely.
And if the finances are drained,
Right.
that's even more of a hardship.
Yes.
So you've got a lot of different aspects
Yes.
of life going on
Yes,
there.
and when you look at trends, I mean, working at nursing homes, you can go anywhere in the country and you'll notice a specific trend, and that is any nursing home that you go into, the majority of people there are women, unfortunately. So when you look at that, you look at the situation of why are women in there, and they usually outlive the men, but the question is, why did they end up in the nursing home? And really people end up in the nursing home because they either run out of money or they run out of care. It's as simple as that. If you run out of money, currently our Medicaid system, which is burdened in Buffalo and Rochester, and hasn't even significantly been penetrated by this group called baby boomers, it's institutional-based care, so primarily your care would be received in a nursing home. Or you run out of care, so you may have funds, but you don't have somebody you can readily rely upon from a day-to-day basis to help meet the needs to keep you at home. So you have to go to a place where that will be done for you.
Position 3 that you had to go with, it's really the preference is to stay at home, and then if you've run out of resources, go to a nursing home. But then to stay at home, you've got to look at how you finance that.
I've never met in 12 years of doing my therapy one person who was in his nursing home and said, I planned on being here or I wanted to be here. How's that for my answer?
You're right. You're
Okay,
right.
I'll only speak from my own personal experience, but most folks would prefer to stay at home or in the community versus a nursing home. And again, that's not to slight a nursing home. They're there, they have a purpose, certainly. But I think that with some planning, people can mitigate that to a greater extent.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it's a very important point. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, even when you always want to have it. Honestly, one of the things I'm concerned about is if I was inflicted with a disease or illness where I needed long-term care, I want to be able to stay at home.
Sure.
You know, it's just my husband and I not having children. It's not important for us to leave assets to children, but on
Correct.
the other hand, it's important for us to leave resources for each other.
Exactly.
So that the one who may be afflicted with whatever, hopefully we live long, healthy, happy lives. But you never know. It's good to be protecting yourselves.
Exactly.
And making sure that you're okay. The other piece that I'm concerned about is what happens to health status, because in order to get long-term care insurance, you have to provide proof of insurability, right?
Yes. Go on, I'm sorry.
What should people be thinking with regard to that?
I get the question asked to me often, David, when is the best time to buy long-term care insurance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great.
And my answer is 6 months before you need it. And because there's no crystal ball, really the insurance companies are businesses, just like nursing homes are businesses or home care agencies, and their job is to make a profit. And so the insurance companies don't want to take people who have chronic conditions that would lend themselves to having them pay a lot of money. So really, people are starting to look at this at a lot younger age. I mean, working with many people in Western New York, being in the long-term care insurance field, if you looked at 6 years ago, the average age of somebody looking into this and applying for it was 66 for me. Mm-hmm. And now if you looked at it from last year, it was 53 years of age.
Is that right?
Yeah, the people are starting to look at this at a younger age because they're becoming more aware, they're becoming more educated on the fact that it's less expensive the younger you are, and it's more difficult to get into a quality company. Because the quality companies are the companies who are stricter in their underwriting criterias. So not everybody interested to buy long-term care insurance can qualify because of their health.
Sure. What are the different criteria that people should be looking at when making a selection of the long-term care carrier that they ought to be choosing?
There's 137 companies that sell long-term care in the U.S. New York has made our job a lot easier. There's less than 20.
Okay.
And there's various ways of purchasing long-term care insurance. But you really want to look at the track record of the company. If you looked at what the National Association of Insurance Carriers says, they say that you should look at a company who's been in the business at least 15 years. And when I say in the business, that means if they're in individual long-term care insurance and group insurance, they should be in individual long-term care insurance for 15 years. If they've been in group insurance for 15 years or greater, that doesn't mean they've been an individual. They're two different animals, if you will.
Okay.
Individual long-term care versus group. They should be A+ rated from rating companies that are non-biased. AM Best is one of those, so you would want to see an A+ rated company. You'd want to look at, have they raised their rates in the past on existing policyholders? So you'd want to look at a company who's demonstrated that they've never raised rates in the past, though any long-term care insurance company can choose to raise rates. So those would be some things to take a look at in terms of evaluating a company.
We want to look at the length of the time that the company has been in business, whether it's group or individual. We want to look at the AM Best rating, and we want to look at how they may have increased premiums for existing policyholders.
Correct.
It's correct that most companies, in fact, all of them, put a little fine print there that they have the right to increase premiums down the road.
Correct. That wonderful statement of past performance is not an indication of future performance. So
Sure.
though a company may have never raised their rates, they do have the right to raise the rates in a guaranteed renewable contract, which is how long-term care insurance is purchased.
It's important to know which of those companies have actually exercised that little provision there,
Correct.
which is a big provision actually in terms of dollars and cents.
Correct.
To really understand, all right, these are the premiums, but has
Correct.
it really gone up over the time period?
Correct,
that
and it's
they've
not
offered?
correct. It's not arbitrary. There are checks and balances. The New York State Insurance Department, you would have to, an insurance company would have to request a rate increase, and it has to be approved by the New York State Insurance Commissioners. So you can't. There are resources to be able to utilize in terms of finding out what companies have filed for rate increases or have had problems with paying out claims, et cetera. So there are resources available to folks to look at.
Now, New York State really wants us to secure our own coverage because of the drain in the system.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of incentives has the government provided from that perspective?
The big thing that the government has done in terms of looking at helping reduce the burden on the Medicaid system is in the form of this New York State Partnership for Long-Term Care. And it's actually been around for a while, since the early to mid-90s. And basically what it is it's a contract between an individual and a number of insurance carriers and Medicaid. And it's a way where the insurance companies can take on some of the Medicaid risk to help reduce the burden on Medicaid, and the individual consumer can have a guarantee that their assets will not be depleted if they go beyond a certain time frame of care through the insurance company, though you have to receive that extended or Medicaid care in New York State to qualify for that safety net from Medicaid. So that's one way that the New York State government is looking to help themselves out and help consumers out. The second way is in the form of a tax credit. You currently will receive a 20% tax credit for owning long-term care insurance, and you're able to reduce your New York State income tax liability based on the premium. So it's not based on age or income, just what the premium is, and then you get a credit, not a deduction, a credit of 20%. So it's very nice. And talking to some people who are politically involved, senators, they're looking at increasing that. There's some folks who are looking to increase it to 50%. It's not that yet, but it's currently 20% credit.
It had been 10% in prior years, and 2004 it was increased to 20.
Right, and actually I think 4 years ago there was no credit, so I think 3 years ago started at 10%, and then they had that for a couple of years, and then last year they made a change to make it 20%. So they really are trying to incentivize people to take the initiative, and really that's it's our responsibility. The government, statewide, countywide, and federally, has made it clear to individuals, based on this HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability Act, that the government is not going to take care of our long-term care. It's our responsibility, and one of the primary ways now that people are looking at taking care of that is through the purchasing of private long-term care insurance.
Got it. So they're doing what they can to make it easier for us to seek out our own programs that will support our needs in the future.
Correct.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing. And really, if you're paying out premiums, a 20% discount on it through the form of tax savings is not a bad subsidy.
Exactly.
That's pretty darn good.
Exactly. And
So-
I think when you look at how we use insurance catastrophically for our lives, it's no different. The risk of our home burning down, or our car being totaled or stolen or what have you, or us being hospitalized for short-term care, or us dying. I mean, this is just another form of insurance. What's interesting though, Nanette, is the likelihood is so much greater when we reach certain ages of needing the care. And so I think it's just a matter of education, and that paradigm or the idea is shifting in one's head that this is no different type of insurance than what we currently are using for other types of insurance risks.
The interesting thing is our homeowners insurance, we pay that. We can't imagine not having it. But yet when we have a fire or a catastrophe in our home, our liability or loss is really limited to the value of the home and the contents of the home. Whereas if you go to a nursing home, the liability is unlimited, because if you live a long time or need home care for a long time, I mean, that could keep draining your assets, including your home. But yet many people struggle as to whether or not they want to protect themselves. So
and when you look at, that's a great point, and when you look at 1 out of 5 people in a nursing home are in a nursing home 5 years or greater. So looking at the averages, we often hear 2.5 to 3 years is when somebody needs long-term care. But if you look at my family, my grandmother needed 12 years of care, and my other grandmother needed 1.5 years. Her husband didn't. And my other grandpa's still alive, God bless him, at 90. So there's no crystal ball. So
right, that's right. So it's best to really think about these issues. Consult with someone's advisor and talk to them about what kind of provisions or things to be looking at. Well, this has been delightful. I really appreciate you giving me all this information, sharing with our viewers today. Dave Casiano, who's the long-term care specialist from GE Long-Term Care, now called Genworth, right?
Yes, Genworth.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Nanette, I enjoyed it, and I appreciate you getting this out to the community to get them educated. It's an important subject, so thank you very much.
You're welcome. And thank you, our viewers, for being here and joining us. If you have any questions or comments, please email me at nnocon@aol.com. Until next time, I'm Nanette Nocon.